Hi everyone, for this tutorial of the resources for this week. We will be talking about a lot of resources within Google Apps for Education, and more specifically Google Docs. So when we use Google Docs to improve student writing, there are a lot of different tools that we're going to focus on. In today's tutorial, I'm going to focus on the drafting, the student feedback or the peer feedback, and the teacher feedback. So first and foremost, when we get into using Google Docs for improving student writing, we talk about the drafting techniques. And I guess I always start with the question, what tools do you currently have students use when drafting writing assignments? And then how can we add to those, supplement them, maybe exchange those different tools, use a mixture of the tools? The teaching decisions that you'll make are really crucial here when you assess these new tools and figure out how they might be of use to your students. And as I mentioned in other tutorials, in the intro tutorial for Module 2, some of these might be review, something from this tutorial in this section of the module, but you might have some review as well. First and foremost, I think what Docs has done, and Google in general, Google Apps for Education in general has done really well, is focus in on the templates. Templates used to be a big deal, kind of went away, and just not too long ago, within this past school year, Docs has become a much better accessible place to get templates. And so when you think about templates and you think about how to get students started with writing, and especially when you talk about formatting, maybe formatting has always been a challenge for them and they just couldn't get over that hurdle. So that's where templates come in. So if you go to docs.google.com, it'll actually open up your Google Docs and you will be able to see different templates up here at the top. There are more templates, and as before, you can create templates as well. I don't know that it'll go in the template gallery like all these, because these are what Google has created, but you still could create a template for your students that you could maybe send via Google Classroom, and you can make a copy for all them. So if there is a specific way that you like them to write some sort of writing assignment, definitely, you do have your MLA and APA reports here, but if there's a specific way you want them to write it, then maybe you do create the template for them and then send it out via Google Classroom. Eliminate some of that formatting, structural, challenges that they might face, and then focus on the writing. I do like this, in terms of like beginning to create a resume or beginning to do a business letter, or I don't know, business letter, more like a cover letter or something like that. So students can see the real life application. And, there are potential, as you all know, there are potential areas in which they could share that work with an authentic audience. So very simply, just using templates, great way to get started with students. Focus on the writing, not the structure, not the formatting. And as I mentioned, Google Classroom is part of this discussion. Really, if you're using Google Classroom, sorry, I'm going to go full screen here. It's a great way to facilitate a lot of your workflow, which I know has always been a challenge. And I would say Google Classroom continues to get better and better. And it's a great way, to create maybe that template that you really like for student writing, especially if you have young writers that you really want to focus on sentence structure, or you really want to focus on grammar, or a very specific skill set. You could create the template for them. Maybe have a fill in the blank type of template, writing prompts for them to work with. You could create the assignment and then send it via Google Docs, mass send it out, make a copy for each student. This all does depend upon what technology you have accessible to you as well. Another great thing to do is including graphic organizers. There are several ways to do this. So you could create your own via Google Drawing. And Google Drawing, is underutilized for what it can truly do for you as a educator and as your students use it. That is one option. Another option is actually to go to the add-ons up here and use some of those different add-ons that are graphic organizers. My intent wasn't really to get into all those. They are available to you, but I'm not going to show you any of those. But say, for example, you take this example. So on paper, you know, this looks great. This is actually copied and then uploaded via a PDF. But think of how you might recreate this assignment as a Google Drawing or some sort of graphic organizer. And again, creating the template or giving students a series of examples for them to look at so they can create their own templates. You know, give them more ownership, give them options, give them choice, but then give them the ownership of saying, you know what, if you really like this plot map, now recreate that in Google Drawing as you establish different parts of your story. Or you really like this format as far as figuring out the problem resolution characters, character description setting, and setting attributes. You know, maybe this is something that really works for these specific learners. What a great way to either create that in Google Docs. I think for this one I probably would create Google Docs first, maybe just using tables. But you know, maybe this one would work really well to create in Google Drawing, and then the students can see and visualize the different plot map segments as they develop their storyline. Those are two very brief examples, but those are some examples to consider. Another thing you could do is creating something like this. This is a social studies journal. And so what this unit notebook looks like, again, you know, I think I would facilitate this workflow by creating the template and then sending it out for each student to fill out, or fill out in groups, you know, do collaborative work. I think there's a lot of opportunity for small group collaborative work here. But basically you have your questions, you have your different ideas that you are focusing in on in the lesson. I don't know, I guess we're talking about early humans, talking about early civilizations here, but and the role of a social scientist and how they would break down early civilizations. But anyway, you can create the notebook, go through the different question types, create boxes maybe for the students to fill in as they are filling out the digital worksheet, if you will. I guess for me, you know, in terms of like creating a digital worksheet, again, I would have you reassess, you know, what is the true purpose of that. If they're just filling in boxes with information that they get out of a textbook, you know, is that the type of learning environment you want them to do meaningful writing with? Or is that a type of you know, lesson that they just need to fill in the boxes to show that they have an understanding of the content? You know, you really have to assess what the purpose is of the assignment. I think though, in terms of like creating opportunities for students to write based on the work that they've done above here, and based on filling out some sort of graphic organizer, filling out, you know, obviously they're doing a lot of different early civilizations and they're filling in different notebook information here. And it's nice because, you know, in a digital notebook sense, I guess, you know, they can add images through Google Doc. They can do their graphic organizer via Google Drawing. So they have all these different elements that they can put in a digital notebook. But when we want them to improve their student writing, you know, I guess I can see this being a great way to have everything organized for them. So when they do their free write at the bottom and talking about different civilizations, now we can have an open-ended dialogue. Students can reference the work that they did from the entire unit. I guess I can see that as being a very useful use of Google Docs in this regard. Other things you can do, you can use the research tool in Google Docs, which is a nice way for drafting, a nice way to, you know, maybe you presented an overarching concept, and now students have to figure out, okay, I'm going to start with a quote. That's going to open up my, I know it's kind of cliche, but, you know, open up my writing with a quote. and how that intermixes with my thoughts on this topic. Or I'm going to start with an image, and that image is going to be something I'm going to write some sort of interpretive writing off of, or creative writing. Or I'm going to find some scholarly research that I'm going to use in my informative writing, and then I'm going to create a citation with a footnote in one of these different styles. So the research tool, very easy to find in your Google Docs. So I'll go to one real quick. Oops. So if we go to our notebook example, under tools, and research is right there, and that's where everything pops up. You can start researching different topics. This is actually kind of interesting. I didn't see this before. But related topics showed up based on what's in our document. That's pretty cool. Starting to get smarter. Another thing you can do in the drafting process, from seeing the changes as they've been made. I mean, we're all used to the revision tool. But observing the evolution of writing is really interesting. And the idea that you can see this, and see how students, because we know writing takes a lot of time to improve your craft, and it takes a lot of time to draft, redraft, draft, edit, until we get to that published point. Students have to do a lot of work in between that. And so really seeing the evolution of writing is really a really helpful thing to see. Some options, as far as collaboration goes. So for drafting, we all know that we can share our document with others, but now when we talk about giving it to specific people and giving them view, comment, or edit access, this really is awesome for providing an authentic audience to a student. This opens up the door for collaborative writing. As I started the course with, you saw those different writers and them coming together to create a story. That the sky really is the limit as far as who you collaborate with, and it opens up the door for teacher and peer feedback as well. Large group feedback. So in this example, sending it out to these students at this school district. You can get that shareable link, send it out to people, and they can take a look at your writing. I really think that's interesting, and it's a really cool thing to have as far as like students building a portfolio, and they have that shareable link. They have their writing, in Google Docs as they progress through high school. So if we're talking secondary here, and they have the opportunity to share their writing and have all their links, it really is interesting and a powerful way for a writer who's trying to improve. And I think everyone wants to write well, but seeing that progression really is helpful. We used to do that with paper, but the ability to have all this facilitated through Google Docs really makes it a lasting thing and easy to reference our old writing. I'm going to check the time here just to see where we're at. I'm going to cut the video now, and then I will go into peer feedback and teacher feedback with a second video.